great to have a chance to talk with you. Big
Oh,
fan, and it's great to have you on the show.
thanks, John. I appreciate the opportunity to speak.
It's going to be cool. Hey, first thing I want to say, first thing I want to talk about is obviously the fifth album, the new album, which I
Sure.
think is fantastic. I had a chance to listen to it through a few
Awesome.
times. Kingdom Torn Asunder
Yes.
drops July 26th. Tell us about how this album came about, and a little bit of background about it.
Okay. This album, even though it's coming out now, is about 5 years old to me. Uh, I actually wrote and recorded this one in the fall of 2019 after we got back from a European tour that September. And it was going to be the next album, which would have got released in 2022. But then a few months after I recorded those songs, a whole bunch of stuff in my life changed.
Right.
My business partner passed away. I became the sole proprietor of said business. 8 weeks after that, the pandemic happened, and my mind state changed drastically from the mind state that I was in when I wrote those songs. And as a result, the songs that ended up being on our most previous album, Where Madness Dwells, kind of
Right.
fell out of my brain right around that time, like mid-pandemic, and I just felt like, I don't know, that's where my mind was, and I felt like maybe the world, since the world was going through the pandemic too, maybe the world could relate to these songs stronger than they could to the more anthemic, upbeat, triumphant songs that are
Right.
on
Right. Right.
Kingdom. So I don't know. I've never done that before. I've never released things out of chronological order before. I just felt like it was the right thing to do. So we released Where Madness Dwells in 2022, and we just kind of let that album, grow wings and circulate. And I just kept this album in my pocket since
Right.
2019. And now I feel like the climate is a lot different around the world and in everybody's minds. And to me, it's a lot more of a more appropriate time to release these songs.
I could see that too because that pandemic put us in such depression across
Straight
the
up, there's
globe.
no other way to say it. Depression is the word to use.
And you went through all that, obviously having all that happen at that time period. So I could see where you put that out. And that album right there is, it leads very nicely into this one. Because
Well,
like you said, the
thanks.
climate change, and that drop, depression, and now we're back into hey, we're open more. Now we're ready for some getting the fists in the air, and the kick in the ass.
Yeah, I was honestly more concerned about releasing Where Madness Dwells than I was about this one, because Where Madness Dwells was such a kind of an emotional shift for us. And the reception was good, thankfully, but I was just worried about how, fans that we've built up until this point were going to react to that one. And like I said, it was a good reaction. This one, I had a second of apprehension, like, well, this is I don't want to say it's a step back, but it's a shift again. But it's a shift back to the original, like I said, anthemic songs that we are known for. So,
Right.
I had a moment of doubt, but that was quickly dashed by, like, no, this is like a typical IronFlame album, and everybody that likes IronFlame for what it is, I think, is going to immediately respond to this one well.
Right. It's a great album. I can understand the enthusiasm, believe me, just listening as a fan. And
Thanks, man.
obviously there's those influences in this one, you know, and I know you mentioned Halloween and Maiden, but I hear like Riot's Thundersteel in this one too. Bits and
Okay.
pieces of that, maybe some Grim Reaper, Judas Priest, obviously. Tell us about songs like obviously the first single you guys have out, Soul Survivors, which is a great song. And one of my
Thanks.
favorites, Riding the Dragons. Very Firewind. It kind of reminds me like of a Firewind song meets
Right
Iron
on.
Maiden. Tell us about those two songs and a little bit of backstory on those.
I wanted to go. I think of albums like a formula and how they flow. I really kind of obsess over album flow. I feel like if I feel like you have to lure the listener in, and by the third song, they have to be committed to listening to the rest of the album. So those first three songs are like super important to me. Because I don't know, as a listener, that's how I think. Like if I'm not engaged fully by the third song, then I'm probably not gonna like that album long term. So I structure my albums that way, and I think that I had a pretty winning formula on that first album, on Lightning Strikes the Crown. So I looked back to it for the first time, since it came out, and thought, well, let me try and ape that formula. So Soul Survivors to me is like our modern day Marching On from the first album. I was flying blind on that first album, and I was just writing from the heart, and I didn't really put too much thought into those songs. And now that they've circulated for so many years and we've played them live, we know what songs really translate well live and which don't. Marching On is always like, it's a guarantee people are fist pumping. It's got that really anthemic chorus. So I wanted another Marching On. So that was my approach to Soul Survivors, was get it like a modern day Marching On. I wanted it to be 6/8 timing, like Marching On is. I wanted it to have a really direct song structure and a really easy chorus to remember, that even people that really can't sing all that well are still going to want to at least try and sing it along with us. So that was my approach with that one. Riding the Dragons, I had the music for a minute, and I kind of didn't really know what to write about, and it was one of the last songs I wrote the lyrics for, and I felt like the well had run dry. As far as my lyrical content was concerned, I was like, man, I think I'm probably going to end up phoning this one in. A lot of times, for the first few albums, I didn't write any words. I just sat down in front of the computer with the songs, and I kind of just came up with the first thing that came to my head, because writing lyrics to me is a real chore. So I shifted that up on this one, and I actually did write words. And it's weird the way things turn out, because even though that was the last one of the last songs, and I was worried about lyrical content, if you look at the lyrics in the liner notes, there's probably more lyrics in that song than there are in any other song on that album. It's chock full. It's like, it's got a ton of words to it. But now that we've started, I don't want to say it was a backseat song, but it was a song that I wasn't really sure whether it was going to end up working well live. You never really know until you get it into the room and you flesh it out and you start rehearsing it. But that one, almost immediately, I think maybe the first time we ran through it as a group, we all looked at each other and were like, this one's going to be really good live, you guys. Like, this one's going to work. So it was like one of those like pleasant surprise songs,
Right. That's cool that you say that too. And what I like that you mentioned is you like the structure of how the album flows. And I know a lot of artists, they'll go by, hey, maybe the label wants it this way or whatever. But it's nice to listen on that journey. And I think that's what you guys do very well, and especially on this album.
Well, thanks, man. I think every album is a journey. I think you should take people on an adventure with you. Yeah, album flow is super important. It's totally an adventure, a journey. And if you put too many fast songs together, if you put too many slow songs together, your brain starts losing interest. I feel like I feel like it has to have rise and fall, emotional, jerks almost, to keep you intrigued and engaged. And I obsess over that. I always have.
That's cool. You do an amazing job. I'll tell you what, amazing.
Thank you.
And I wanted to bring up one of the songs. I mean, I was reading the notes, obviously, and the song I want to talk about is "Majesty of Steel."
Okay.
which I think is really cool because, you know, in your description, you know, it's a driving fast in an old muscle car, classic car. How'd that
Yeah.
song come about? Because I love muscle cars, and, you know, and it's great to hear how these songs, you know, originate.
Well, it's definitely a change of pace for me lyrically. I've never ever written anything like that, but the song kind of wrote itself. I felt because, I think if you listen to that song, it's a little different than a typical Iron Flame song. You could almost put it in the hard rock category,
Right.
but it's really mid-paced and upbeat, and like to me, certain songs are driving songs, like songs that as soon as you hear
Right.
them, you're like, man, I want to get in the car and I want to drive really fucking fast to this song.
That's great.
Judas Priest is really good for that. Sabotage is really good for that. But so once the music for that song kind of fell out of my head, it had that feel to it. It had that drive. I'm like, this is a driving song. So I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to write a song about driving fast, and just see what happens. So the title could be a little misleading. I think if you glance at the title, you think it's going to be about, a sword or
Right.
something,
Right.
your typical power metal lyrical content. But yeah, once you get into it, you're like, oh man, this is about driving a fast car. And I'm the same way, man. I grew up in the 80s, and my first cars were late 70s vehicles, and that's when everything had power.
That's right.
Everything was made out of steel, and you felt powerful driving those vehicles. And it's just unfortunately a time that's no longer with us. Those are
Right.
considered classic cars now.
Right.
But yeah, that's how I grew up, and that makes me feel the same way when I hear those kinds of songs.
That's great. And like summer's around here too. And I know you're from the Ohio area, and I'm from Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
obviously. And we get that short window
Yep.
of time. And then to have a song like this that you could blast the windows out and,
Heck yeah.
really crank it up. I see where you're coming from, man. It's a great song. It really is.
Thanks, man.
What I wanted to ask you is the studio or the recording that you do for Iron Flame. Tell us about that process. I know things are different nowadays, and things get passed back and forth. I mean, some bands aren't in the studio at all. Sometimes it's like, different pieces of it. Tell us about the recording process for Iron Flame and how you handle that.
Well, one thing that's always been the same is that I always record in my own studio, which is basically where I'm at now. I'm in the lounge of my studio. It's in the basement of my house, and I've recorded other bands for decades now. So I have, I'm definitely not a pro by any stretch. I consider myself a refined amateur engineer, but I've always done it the same way as far as writing and recording everything myself, all the instruments except for guitar solos, because I can't do those. I'm not capable. So I have my guitar players do that for me. And for the first couple of albums, it was a pretty repetitious formula of not thinking too much about the songs and just kind of committing to the first thing that I came up with. And that was the album. Like I didn't write anything extra. And then it reached a point a couple of albums in where I thought, well, maybe I'm selling myself short by doing this. What would happen if I wrote a bunch of songs, at least musically, and then cut those down to an album's worth of material? So that's what I did on Blood Red Victory. I think I wrote, I don't know, a couple dozen songs, maybe 24, 25, and just reduced those down to an album's worth 10 songs. And then on this one, which technically was the follow-up, I did it even more extreme, and I think musically I wrote 36, 37 songs,
Wow.
which was a little too much in hindsight. I don't think I'll ever do that again. But yeah, I just went through those 36, 37 songs of music, no lyrics, and just picked what complemented the next song the best, and
Right.
what sounded
Right.
like they belonged together. And that's what became Kingdom Torn Asunder.
That's cool to hear how that happens. And that's what leads into my next question, is the writing process. Now, when you put an Iron Flame song together, is it an idea? Is it a riff, a chorus? Because like you said, the songs are so well structured, and I know that's how your foundation is. But how does an Iron Flame song get started?
I mean, it varies sometimes, but 90% of the time it revolves around the riffs. And that's normally the foundation of every song. I normally just sit down and just spit out riffs. I'll come up with one cool riff that I like, and then I'll build riffs around that to where I feel I have enough to make a song out of, and then I'll set that aside, and then I'll move on and I'll repeat the process. Very few, very rare is it when I have like a vocal idea that I'll build a song around. I think maybe 2 or 3 songs I could say in the catalog I've done that with. Most of the time it's about those riffs, and I've switched it up album to album. As far as like the first couple of albums really revolved around the guitar harmonies. Those were like the hooks of every song. And then I kind of shifted it up a couple of albums in and started to focus a little bit more on the riffs themselves and like write more riff based songs and less dependent upon the guitar harmonies. And I find myself going more that way. The deeper we get into the catalog, I feel like we're more riff based nowadays than less harmony based.
Right. That's cool to hear, because like I said, when I listen to albums, I like to, when I have that backstory, it makes me a different listener.
Sure.
Kind of like deeper, and I say, hey, I know how he wrote this song, so I totally understand it. You're a multi-instrumentalist. I know you do a lot of this stuff on there, if not most of it. Is there a favorite instrument that you have? Is there something that you enjoy to play more or look forward to more?
I tell everybody that I could fake my way through anything. I just know just enough to scrape by.
Right.
I would say like instrument wise, it would have to be bass. Out of everything, that's the only thing. It's the only stringed instrument that I play, or instrument that I play in other bands. In Brimstone, Coven, I play bass and sing. I enjoy the other instruments. I just in a live setting, I definitely find myself, because I'm not that good at guitar or definitely not drums. Like as far as drums go, I can play in spurts to where I could get a beat going for about 30 seconds, enough to record it. But to play like our music front to back on the drums, there's no way. Like by the time I got to the end of the first chorus, I'd be winded and I'd be on the floor collapsed. And it's the same with guitar. I mean, the guitar isn't the most technical stuff in the world that I'm playing, but it's just it takes a lot of concentration for me to play guitar tightly. And I could probably do it if I really put my mind to it. I just kind of, I don't want to say I'm lazy. I just want to enjoy it. I just want to kind of turn my brain off and be in the moment. And the only things that I can do that with in a live setting would be bass guitar and vocals. I can do that, go on autopilot and enjoy the experience of playing live. All the other instruments require too much concentration.
I could see that, because that's ultimately what you want to be. I mean, you want to be that live performer, because that's a release for you guys.
Well, sure, and especially being the front man, you have to be the identity of the band. You have to be the one that engages with everybody, that keeps everybody's attention, and kind of controls the emotional response of the crowd. So you can't be concentrating too hard, or people are going to see that and they're not going to engage. So yeah, it's pretty important.
That's right. And then it throws you off your game as well, I'm sure too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it wouldn't be nearly as enjoyable that way.
Right. So how about the start? How did you get started in this? And I know you started out in the extreme metal side of things, and now you're in the the melodic power. I think it transcended well, because you could hear elements of that heavy side too, that's driving but that melody side too just is a nice mix. Tell us about how you got started.
Well, I'm glad that you said that. You're, of all the people that I've ever talked to, you're the only person that's ever kind of picked up on that. Um, yeah, it's true. But even though, I was enamored with extreme music when I was a kid. As soon as I heard, I don't know, there was a period of about 10 or 12 years where I just became obsessed with the next most extreme thing. Um,
Right.
right around the time that like death metal and grindcore came out in like the late 80s, very early 90s. I just was exposed to it at the right time. Sepultura and Napalm Death and Obituary and Bolt Thrower and all those early death metal bands from Europe, from the US, um, were mind-blowing to me. And from that point on, that became a pursuit, uh, an obsession to just what's the next extreme thing.
Right.
So I got enamored with death metal, then I got enamored with grindcore, and then I got enamored with this, like the second wave of black metal, the Scandinavian stuff,
Right.
and just followed what was the most extreme. And I still, to this day, cling tenaciously to that era of music. Like I have to rely
Right.
on friends to turn me on to newer bands, because
Right.
like if you heard what I rock in my vehicle every day, it's stuff from the 90s basically. But that being said, the very, very, very first metal band I ever heard was Iron Maiden. So that was the seed that I grew from. It was the cloth that I was cut from.
Right.
So I think I'm a pretty even amalgamation of the new wave of British heavy metal, and equal parts that and extreme Scandinavian and US death metal and all
Right.
that other extreme stuff from the 90s.
That's cool to hear because when I listen, I hear, those elements. And not a lot of bands have all those different elements. They either have the Euro side or the US side. But I think what
Right.
you have is that good mix right here. And that's what sets Iron Flame apart, to the
Thanks,
listener,
man.
in my opinion.
It's funny because we had an interview a few days ago and we were talking about influences, and I brought up all those extreme bands, and that person was really surprised to hear that. I'm like, well,
Mm.
that I totally hear that in my style of playing.
Right.
But that person was surprised, but you picked right up on it.
It's good because when you listen to the production of the albums, even though every album's a little bit different, I hear those elements, and I like that classic sound because it's not done enough, and sometimes when it's done, it's either poorly done. But what I like about this album especially is the production too, because it has that nice big thick sound.
Well,
When I
another
listen through it.
another thing that's different about this album is this is the first time that I let someone else handle the mixing and the mastering part of the recording process. Again, it was just another doubtful thought in my head, like, well, I've been doing this, I always do my own recordings and do my own productions. Am I selling myself short by not getting someone else to get their take, um production wise, on my music? And it was a lot like, it was scary. It was kind of like handing over your newborn baby to somebody
Right.
else for the first
Can
time,
imagine. Yeah.
So yeah, it was definitely, I was a little apprehensive at first, but thankfully the universe provided. And a studio, or an engineer from a studio in Germany, reached out to me on Instagram, and complimented the last album, and we just started talking about production. And I mentioned, that I do my own productions, but I would totally be open to working with somebody else. And we just kind of had a natural conversation about it, and it just led to us, working together. We worked on one song, just to kind of test the waters, and I really liked what he did with it. And then I let the rest of the guys in the band hear what he did with it, and they were just super excited about it. So we just decided to work together on the whole thing. The studio is called PointBreak Recordings, and they're out of Cologne, Germany. But super easy guy to work with, really professional. And yeah, we're all really pleased with the outcome of it. It was definitely a good move.
I think the fans are going to be very happy with this. You guys,
Thanks, man. I hope so.
It really is a great album. It's a great listen. I wanted to go back to the first album. I mean, Lightning Strikes the Crown.
Sure.
And that was a great launching point for you as a band. And there's more of that raw sound, obviously, in the start. But you could hear the band, starting to solidify right there, early. And songs like Shadow Queen, I think is a great song. It's more grinding, that power metal side.
Yeah.
And then you have the Kingdom Come is kind of like that Maiden-esque sound, which I think is great. Tell us about that writing of that album. And when you look back now, what are your thoughts on that writing on that album?
I got lucky on that one, man, because it's one of those, if you could see into the future things, you would do things a lot differently. Right. I had zero intentions of turning IronFlame into a full-fledged band. It was just meant to be a one-off project. And because of that, I put zero thought into it. Honestly, man, I'd like to say that I put all this time and effort into it, but I didn't. All those songs really fell out of me in like a matter of days, and were arranged in a matter of weeks, and recorded in a matter of weeks. And I didn't really obsess over the production too much. I didn't obsess over anything too much because I didn't think anything was going to come of it other than me making a couple of copies and selling it to a couple of buddies and
right.
moving on. So I again, like I said, I put it just kind of came out of me. And those the two songs at the end were songs that I just kind of wanted to tag on as like bonus tracks, because the first 8 songs are the album to me. So Kingdom Come and Fighting Onward were songs that I wrote maybe a few weeks after, because I wanted to do the album on vinyl, so it could only hold 8 songs faithfully. But then I wanted to do a CD too, and said, well, I could, if I put a couple extra songs on there, then I know the metal community is kind of divided as far as who likes vinyl and who likes CD. So I wanted to provide some incentive for the CD guys to buy it. So I threw those couple of extra tracks on there. But yeah, those 2 songs were kind of afterthought songs. And I didn't think much about them either, but they're 2 of my favorite songs from that era. And we, as a band, love playing those songs live, especially Fighting Onward. Fighting Onward is a really anthemic song that translates really well live.
Right. That's cool, because that's one of my next questions actually is, the last album, obviously, where Madness Dwells, 2022, and you guys kind of launched into some live festivals after that.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, because that was that seemed like it really built all the way to the launching of this album.
Well, I think it's probably an end result of the momentum that we were building from 2018 on, and we were really afraid once the pandemic hit, because we were firing on all cylinders by the end of 2019. Like I said, we did our first European tour in 2019. We did festivals before that, but that was our first real tour, and we did a festival on that run. We had multiple festivals lined up for the following year. And then once the pandemic hit, everything for everyone, not just us, obviously, came to a screeching halt. And we were really worried about losing that really good momentum that we had built up. And it definitely affected us like it affected everyone else. It set us back a ways, and everybody had to scramble to kind of re establish those footholds that they had in the scene. But thankfully, the fans wanted to see us as much as we wanted to see the fans, and the same with the promoters. So none of the promoters forgot about us in that, you know, short 1.5, 2-year period. So we got invited back to multiple festivals in Germany. And Germany really, you know, metal is worldwide, for sure, but I feel like there's a special market and a special metal community in Germany, especially when it comes to what you would call traditional heavy metal. They just, there's something else over there, man. As far as if you're a US band and you're used to the way things work over here and the struggles that, you know, metal bands in general, not just traditional metal bands, but metal bands in general, experience over here, as far as the difficulty in booking and promoting and getting people to come out to shows, the overall lack of festivals. I think US is really starting to smarten up, and you're seeing more festivals now in the past couple of years. But before that, you know, like up until like the late 2010s, there really weren't that many music festivals. As far as metal goes, they were few and far between. Now we have a couple of really good ones out there now. So like I said, I think we're starting to wake up and take some cues from South America and the UK and Europe, anywhere in the EU. So it's really important for a band like us to play those kinds of festivals, because that's where our key market is. And that's where a lot of German fans in particular get turned on to new stuff. They look to those festivals and the promoters of those festivals to bring the old classics that they know and love over, you know, from whichever country to play there, and also to bring in the new guys and the new talent and turn them on to fresh metal, even in the traditional sense. So yeah, it's really important to play those festivals. We hang a lot on that, for sure.
You're right, and that's good for you guys, because a band like IronFlame is a great fit for those festivals. I mean, like you said, to generate that new, and even the younger audience too, because we're starting to see everybody I've been talking to, we're starting to see younger kids at the shows now, which is great for metal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you know, people my age, their kids are, you know, in their 20s now, you know, and so there's been a generation even before that are like, you know, have been listening to their parents, you know, musical influences this whole time. Now they're addicted to metal just like their parents are, and now they're old enough to go to these festivals, or old enough to have a beer with their parents at these festivals. So yeah, it's a whole new generation of metal fans supporting newer bands like us, and then rediscovering the elder gods that are still around and playing live, like Judas Priest, you know, Queensryche, all those great bands. Yeah, it's a cool thing to see, man. It's very cool to see.
That has to be cool to play it too, as a musician, you know, getting up there and being that front guy, the center of attention. For you,
Oh
I mean,
man,
that has to be like amazing.
the best feeling in the world, and I didn't really experience that fully until we played Germany for the first time, which was really shocking because I didn't expect anyone to know us. We had only been around, I mean, honestly, the record had only been out for like less than a year, I think, when we got booked for the Keep It True Festival in 2018. And we were the first band on the Saturday of that festival. You know, people were just starting to crawl out of their tents, and you know, most of them were hungover from the night before, and you know, we didn't expect much, but the room filled up like halfway through our set, and I looked out and I saw people who I'm seeing for the first time, you know, pumping their fists, and they're mouthing the words to our songs, and that is like the most humbling, mind-blowing experience that I've ever, you know, felt as a live musician. Was like, man, how do these guys know us, and how do they know these songs? And they're super passionate about this stuff. We did a meet and greet and like a record signing right afterwards, and there were people lined up, and like that is just such an incredible experience for someone who has been in the underground scene for decades, and
Right.
even people on a local level don't know who you are, let alone
That's right.
want your autograph or know the words to your songs. So
Right.
it's just an incredible experience, and that's what I think sets it apart over there too. It's just the level of passion and the level of appreciation over there. It's like everyone over there is just as passionate as you or I were when we were kids and discovering metal for the first time.
Right.
It's like
Right.
it's just that strong with that demographic over there, regardless of age and how long they've been listening to it. It's awesome, man. It's a super special thing over there.
That's great to hear. Maybe one of these days we'll get it back here at some point. I'm
That would
hoping,
be awesome. That would be awesome.
because we need something. There's no
Yeah.
identity anymore. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, like I said, the people who are putting festivals together on this side of the ocean now are definitely doing it right. Randy with Blades of Steel, 2 Minutes
Right.
to Tulsa, and Hell's Heroes, Gates of Metal, Stormbringer. All those festivals. I haven't been to all of them, but I've been to most of them, and all the ones that I've been to have been done right. They're using the same template that the Euro market is doing. They're bringing in the right bands. They're treating people well. They're paying people well. It's well organized. And if you stick to that formula and you do it consecutively year to year, then
Right.
you're going to get bigger and better every year, period. So we're off to a good start as far as taking cues from all those European markets on the festival circuit. I think 5 years from now we're going to be a force to be reckoned with, and all those bands from Europe are going to want to come over here and play our festivals.
That's great to hear.
Yeah,
That's great to hear. So that's something that's definitely needed.
for sure.
We talked about the strength of the band, which I think is excellent. Tell us about some of the musicians in this band. Obviously, Quinn with Icarus Witch, who I love that band for a long time, and Jesse Scott was
Yeah.
in a band, Defy the Tide. It was one of my favorites.
Oh,
You
so
know,
you've heard Defy the Tide? Yeah, they're a
I
great band
loved
too.
them. A great band. Tell us
Hmm.
about some of the guys in this band and how well you guys work together and how you cop a lot of this live.
Well, I've known all these guys for a long time, and a lot of them were just I handpicked this band for sure. And I was very particular about who I wanted to play in this band, and all these guys, like I said, I've known them for a long time, but I've known them from different circles. So Noah, I've known him for a long time. He was in a band named after himself. He was in a band called Skiba for years. That was like a very groove-oriented thrash band, I would say. I did a couple recordings for them, and I knew right away that he was an ace of a drummer, and he was an even better person. So we started out with a different drummer in IronFlame, but we needed a replacement pretty quickly, and thankfully, before I knew we needed to replace the drummer in IronFlame, Noah had already said, "Hey, man, I've heard that first IronFlame album. I really like it, and I jam to it all the time. I know it really well. If you ever need a backup drummer, let me know." So he was the first person I called upon, and thankfully it worked out. Same with Jess. I've known Jesse since he was a little kid. His parents owned a venue that one of my older bands way back in the day used to play at, and he was a guitar player from early on. Even when I met him and he was a little kid, he was, behind the soundboard shredding.
Right.
And again, I was good friends with everybody in Defy the Tide. I'd recorded Defy the Tide before too. So initially, I was really just kind of borrowing Jesse from Defy the Tide because we needed a guitar player at the time, and
Right.
he just ended up being a full-time member. But and Quinn, you know, I knew from Icarus Witch years ago. Him and I clicked immediately when we first met, and we had always talked about and joked about doing an Iron Maiden cover band. So when it came time to put this band together, I just saw that as a perfect opportunity to work with him. James, I've known for a long time too. Him and I were in a band called Dofka in the mid 2000s.
Right.
And for a few years, we played live on stage, and we already had a chemistry. We already had a kinship. We clicked really well, you know, personally. So when it came time to build this band, it was pretty obvious who I was going to pick. And I think the most important thing, they're amazing, incredibly talented people, but I've known, you know, throughout the years, that only takes you so far in a band. Like if
Right.
there's not good people and there's not good chemistry within that group of people, it's destined to fail. And that's where I really got lucky, is just assembling such a fantastic group of people, like not just musicians, but people. We can spend an indefinite amount of time together and we still like each other at the end of the day. You know, we could be on the road for a long time. There's times where we've been on the road and driving for hours, and we've driven in total silence, and it's not awkward silence. It's just silence because, you know, it's like a personal relationship. Once you get so comfortable with somebody, you could sit there for an undetermined amount of time and not say anything, and it's okay. It's not awkward.
Right.
And that's the level that we're on, and I think that's a really rare level to achieve in a band. And I feel super grateful and super lucky that I got these guys on my team, because I'm nothing without them. I couldn't do it without them. I'm super blessed to have them.
That's nice for you too, as a as a writer, obviously as a vocalist, to have that cohesive unit behind you.
Oh,
And
super
then
lucky. I don't even have to think. Like, you know, it's nice. It's for the, you know, for years I've been in bands where you're not sure about one person or two people. You're like, okay, what's this person going to do this time when we go on stage? What are they
right.
going to play this time? You know, there's never any doubts. I just We all kind of can all go on autopilot and enjoy the experience of being on stage, because there's no question of what anybody's going to do. It's very scripted. Like, it's predictable. We know what we're going to do, and we can just turn our brains off and enjoy it, man. It's really cool.
I could definitely see this band taking even another step. Like you said, you could hear the growth, and I'm looking forward to it because you guys deserve it. It's nice to see, a band from the tri-state area, doing so well and putting
Thanks,
all this
man.
together. I really do.
Well, it's
Oh,
it's a wave like anything else, and we'll ride it till we can't ride it anymore, you know?
that's it. That's it. That's definitely it. What about the rest of 2024? What's in store for IronFlame? Even into 2025, what do you guys have coming up besides the
We
album
haven't
release?
done much this year, to be honest. Our show season is just starting, so we're going to do an album release on the day of the album release on the 26th. We're going to be at 123 Pleasant Street in Morgantown, doing an album release show. And from there, we have a couple other local shows. We have a Helltown gig in Mount Pleasant, PA, August 3rd. And
Nice.
we're playing another local gig here on August 10th. And then from there, we're August 13th, we're at Westside Bowl in Youngstown with Haunt and Savage Master and Dr. Smoke. And then from there, we're doing a short US run with a great band out of New England called Adamantis. They're from the Boston
Nice.
area. They're on Cruz del Sur Music. We've been friends with them for a while, and we played with them in LA last year at a festival, and just kind of made a vow to work together in the future. So us and Adamantis are doing this little run at the end of August, and it's starting out in Pittsburgh. We're hitting Indianapolis, Chicago, coming back through Ohio, Maryland, New York, Rhode Island, and then we're ending it at the RPM Fest, which is the Boston area, and then coming back home.
Cool.
So
Nice.
yeah, we've got some cool stuff planned for this summer, and then once that runs over, then it's back to the grind. Once the weather turns and gets cold again, then we'll crawl back down into the basement and start working on new stuff. Just the cycle continues.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. I'm definitely going to come out and see you guys. I mean, I was just in Mount Pleasant this past weekend, so it's like maybe an hour from here, maybe.
Okay, yeah, it's not that far, man, and
Yeah,
it's a great
it's
place.
close.
If you've never been to Helltown in Mount Pleasant, that place is a fantastic place.
I'll definitely be out to see you.
Right
How about
on.
any last words, Andrew?
I mean, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I truly appreciate it. You're a really easy person to talk to. You ask really good questions. I want to thank everybody locally and otherwise for all the support that we've received up until this point. We truly appreciate it. We couldn't do it without you. And look forward to seeing you this summer on the road.
We can't wait. And to answer that, I want to say thank you for doing what you do, because
Absolutely, man.
listening to this music, and I know you guys work so hard at it to get it out there because it's an art, touches people. It's definitely touched me. I mean, I know when I'm down, I'm gonna throw an IronFlame album in, and I'm ready to go, and it changes everything, man. So thank you for
That's
doing what
awesome,
you do.
John. Thank you, man. I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot.
You got it. Everybody that's listening, Kingdom Torn Asunder, July 26th, IronFlame. It's a great album. And I think you guys are really going to do well with this. I'm looking forward to seeing you out on the road.
Thank you, brother. I look forward to it too.
All right, Andrew. Thanks. Have a good rest of the day, man. And we'll be spreading the word for you, brother. No doubt.
Sounds good, man.
Take care.
Yep, you too.